Welcome to this presentation on ethical practice options and defined duties for a therapist. I am Vibhuti Sharma, and in this session, we will examine how ethical reasoning shapes therapeutic choices when compassion, duty, and law intersect. Through this discussion, I aim to show that ethics in therapy is not simply about compliance. It's about understanding humanity, responsibility, and care. We will be guided by philosophical ethics and the power threat meaning framework to explore how theory becomes practical wisdom. Our case centers on a 47-year-old man diagnosed with depression. He shares that he gave his terminally ill mother an overdose of pain and sleeping medication, believing it to be an act of mercy to end her suffering. He had cared for her for many years as she declined with Alzheimer's and respiratory illness. Now, caring for his frail father, who has expressed a wish for a similar passing, he is consumed by guilt, yet still convinced he acted compassionately. He comes to therapy seeking understanding, forgiveness, and moral clarity. This is where our ethical exploration begins. This case presents one of the most complex challenges for a therapist. We must hold two truths simultaneously: our duty to maintain confidentiality and our moral obligation to prevent harm. If the father's well being is at risk, how do we honor both compassion and the law? Can empathy coexist with accountability? The role of the therapist here is not to judge, but to help the client reflect, contextualize, and find meaning in his experience. Ethical reasoning, consultation, and supervision are vital tools for navigating this moral uncertainty. Boundaries are the invisible frame that gives therapy its safety and structure. Our professional codes remind us that confidentiality is sacred, but not absolute. It must be weighed against potential harm. We must be transparent about these limits with clients from the beginning. When in doubt, we seek supervision, legal advice, or ethical consultation. The goal is to protect trust without compromising accountability and to combine empathy with professional clarity. Philosophy provides the language of moral reflection. Kantian ethics teaches duty and moral law, doing right regardless of consequences. Utilitarianism asks us to calculate the greater good, seeking to minimize suffering. The ethics of care reminds us that morality is relational. It emerges through empathy, attentiveness, and connection. Existentialism emphasizes freedom, choice, and responsibility for our values. Indian philosophy integrates dharma, ahimsa, karuna, and seva, duty, nonviolence, compassion, and service. As therapists, we don't choose one school, but weave them together to form a balanced, context sensitive ethics. To bring philosophy to practice, we draw upon each tradition. From Kant, we uphold truth and professional duty. From care ethics, we stay attuned to relationship. From existentialism, we help clients face freedom and guilt. From utilitarianism, we assess impact and minimize harm. And from Indian ethics, we embody compassion and service. In this case, the therapist's role is to help the client reflect, not absolve, to support him in finding coherence and responsibility within his own moral world. The power threat meaning framework, developed by Johnston and Boyle, reimagines distress not as a symptom of disorder, but as a response to threat and loss of power. It invites us to ask, how has power operated in your life? What threats have you faced? What meanings have you made? Through this approach, we move away from pathology and towards understanding. In this case, Guilt can be seen as a response to moral injury and social isolation, and therapy becomes a process of restoring meaning and agency. Kantian ethics aligns with PTM's concept of power and autonomy. The client's guilt reveals his inner moral law, his sense of duty and accountability. Therapy can help him differentiate between imposed authority and internal moral reasoning. By reclaiming his agency, he moves from helplessness to moral strength. This process respects both his freedom and his conscience. A utilitarian lens relates to PTM's emphasis on safety and well being. The client sought to relieve suffering, believing the outcome would bring peace. In therapy, we validate the intention without condoning the act. We examine its consequence for his emotional, moral, and relational well being, guiding him towards ethical caregiving that protects both the self and others. The ethics of care links deeply with PTM's meaning dimension. The client's act arose from love, exhaustion, and compassion, not malice. Therapy helps him reframe his story through connection and empathy rather than guilt. This allows him to honor his mother's suffering while also acknowledging his own. Relational healing begins when judgment is replaced by understanding. Existential philosophy reminds us that freedom and guilt are inseparable. The client made a choice that cannot be undone. Now he must confront it, what it means to live authentically in its aftermath. Through therapy, guilt becomes a teacher rather than a punishment. He learns that ethical living involves continuous reflection and renewed commitment to responsibility. Indian ethics offers an integrated moral perspective. Dharma reminds us of our righteous duty, ahimsa of non harm, and seva of compassionate service. By viewing guilt as a signal for alignment, not condemnation, therapy can help the client transform moral pain into spiritual growth. He begins to act through compassion rather than fear, reconnecting with moral balance and peace. Ethics in therapy is not about perfection, but about awareness and integrity. There is rarely one right answer, only the commitment to think, feel, and act responsibly. Through reflection and action, therapists hold the tension between empathy and law, between understanding and accountability. Ethical competence lies in humility, the ability to ask, what is the most caring thing I can do right now? This presentation draws inspiration from Aristotle, Kant, Mill, Beauvoir, Sartre, and Johnston and Boyle's power threat meaning framework, along with Indian philosophical traditions. Each of these thinkers remind us that ethical reflection is both universal and deeply human. Ethics is a living conversation between principles and compassion. Through reflection, courage, and openness, we evolve as ethical practitioners. Thank you for joining this exploration of moral complexity and care in therapy. I invite you to carry this dialogue forward in supervision, in practice, and in your own self reflection.